When I saw the message, "Hey, wanna meet up tomorrow?" flash across the phone screen, I knew my life had changed forever. My name is Rudolph, I'm 32 years old and I work as an accountant at a mid-sized company. My wife Vanessa is a talented furniture designer. We got married 6 years ago, and it was the most impulsive decision of my life. I met this incredibly beautiful woman at a mutual friend's party, couldn't resist her charm and proposed 2 months later. She said yes and we got married so quickly that we didn't even have time to truly get to know each other. The first 2 years were like a fairy tale. We traveled together, laughed at the same jokes, spent lazy Sunday mornings in bed reading the newspapers and drinking coffee. Vanessa would sketch furniture designs while I organized our finances, and everything seemed perfectly balanced. We talked about buying a bigger house, maybe getting a dog, perhaps starting a family someday. Life felt complete, stable, and genuinely happy. I remember thinking that I was the luckiest man alive. But then something started to change. Vanessa fell in with a group of radical feminist friends who constantly talked about independence, self-realization, and how men supposedly held them back. She started spending more and more time with them, reading certain blogs, watching certain videos. Gradually, her behavior changed beyond recognition. If I had to simplify it, she completely lost her mind. She started screaming at me for no reason whatsoever. I could simply ask how her day went and receive a full-blown tantrum in response. When I tried to figure out what was happening, she blamed me for every conceivable sin. I told her something was wrong with her, that she needed to calm down, but this only made the situation worse. Fortunately, we didn't have children. I had always postponed that conversation because I felt something wasn't right. Honestly, I didn't understand why I tolerated all this for so long. Maybe I hoped she would return to the woman I fell in love with. Maybe I was just afraid of change. But fate decided for me. That evening, Vanessa was cooking dinner in the kitchen while I sat in our living room reviewing documents. Suddenly, her phone vibrated. It had fallen between the couch cushions when she sat down earlier, and she had forgotten it there. I instinctively glanced at the screen and saw that message. My heart skipped a beat. I couldn't open the conversation. She would immediately see that the message had been read. So I just put the phone back and pretended nothing had happened. Dinner passed in heavy silence. I could barely swallow, and Vanessa kept checking her phone once she finally found it. That night I couldn't sleep. I lay next to her thinking about how long this might have been going on. When she finally fell asleep, I carefully took her phone. She always used the same password as our shared Netflix account, and went to the bathroom. My hands trembled as I opened the messenger. What I saw exceeded my worst fears. The conversation with an unknown number had been going on for 3 months. Flirting, meetings, plans. I quickly forwarded all the messages to myself and deleted the outgoing ones. In the morning, she noticed nothing. The next day I tried to find this guy through his phone number, but the search yielded nothing. Then I realized I needed a strategy. I couldn't just leave like that. Our house had been purchased partially with my money before the wedding, plus I had invested quite a bit in furniture and renovations. But for court, I needed concrete evidence of infidelity, obtained legally. I drove to a large electronics store on the outskirts of town. I bought 5 miniature surveillance cameras and a GPS tracker for cars, the kind usually used to track stolen vehicles or cargo shipments. The salesman didn't even ask any questions. I felt a strange mixture of determination and sadness as I carried the bag to my car, but I knew what I had to do. The next morning I told Vanessa I wasn't feeling well and would stay home. When she left for work, I called my best friend Jason. We'd been friends since college and I knew I could trust him with anything. He was the kind of guy who would drop everything to help you move at midnight or bail you out of jail. Not that either of us had ever needed bailing out. "Dude, of course I'll come right over," he replied when I briefly explained the situation. "Give me an hour." Within 2 hours we had installed cameras in the living room, bedroom, and hallway. We camouflaged them so well that no one would notice. One behind a picture frame, another in a decorative book on the shelf, a third in a clock. Jason had some experience with tech installations from his IT job, which made everything much easier. We tested each camera multiple times to ensure the angles were perfect and the video quality was clear enough for court. That evening, when Vanessa went to take a shower, I snuck into the garage and secured the GPS tracker under the passenger seat of her Honda Civic. I installed it so deep that even car wash workers couldn't accidentally find it. The device was small, black, and virtually invisible unless you knew exactly where to look. "What's next?" Jason asked when we returned inside, both of us trying to act casual as Vanessa emerged from the bathroom in her robe. "Now we wait," I replied quietly. The next day at work, I requested a 2-week vacation, citing family circumstances. My manager, probably assuming someone was sick or dying, approved it immediately without many questions. Jason also took time off from his IT company. He told his boss he needed to help his sister move across the country, which was a complete lie, but it worked. We began our investigation in earnest. The first few days, nothing particularly interesting happened. Vanessa drove to work, visited friends, went shopping. We took turns monitoring the GPS signal through an app on my phone. Honestly, it was actually kind of exciting. We had never done anything like this before. We sat in my car at a safe distance, drank coffee, joked about life, and discussed plans for the future. You know, Jason said one day, when this is all over, we need to go somewhere. Get away from all this craziness. To the mountains, I replied. I've always wanted to go to the mountains, but Vanessa hated hiking. Deal. On the 6th day of surveillance, something finally happened. Vanessa didn't drive to work but headed in the opposite direction across town. The GPS led us to a fashionable hotel downtown. We parked nearby and waited. 20 minutes later, we saw her exit her car and walk inside. She was wearing a dress I'd never seen before. Something tight, red, and definitely not appropriate for a business meeting. This could be a work meeting, Jason suggested, though his tone suggested he didn't believe it. But 15 minutes later we saw a man. Tall, athletic build, wearing an expensive suit. He also entered the hotel. I photographed him on my phone, my hands shaking slightly as I tried to keep the camera steady. This was the moment when I realized there was no turning back. We waited 3 hours. Those were possibly the longest 3 hours of my life. Jason tried to keep me distracted with stories about his latest dating disasters, but I couldn't focus. My mind kept creating scenarios of what was happening inside that hotel, each one worse than the last. When they finally came out, separately with a 10-minute interval, I took several more photos. But the lawyer I had consulted earlier by phone had warned me, photos near a hotel aren't proof of infidelity. I needed something more concrete. We need to provoke her into bringing him home, I told Jason that evening. We were sitting in his backyard, drinking beer and trying to process what we'd witnessed. How? I'll say I'm going on a business trip. The next morning I played my part. I told Vanessa that the company was sending me to Detroit for 4 days to audit one of the branches. She tried to hide her satisfaction, but I saw the spark in her eyes. It was subtle, just a slight widening of her pupils, a barely suppressed smile, but it was there. I thought I was going to be sick, but I held it together. Okay, she said indifferently. When are you leaving? Tomorrow morning. Those 2 days fell perfectly on a weekend, so they would have enough time. I pretended to call the airline, confirming my tickets, while she was in the same room. She didn't even look up from her phone, probably already texting her lover about the perfect opportunity. The next day I loaded a suitcase into the car in front of Vanessa, kissed her goodbye, she barely touched my cheek with her lips, and drove off. But instead of going to the airport, I went to Jason's house. He lived in a private house across the street and slightly to the side of our house, and from his second-floor window, our windows were visible. We set up all the cameras to stream directly to his laptop. We bought beer, ordered pizza, and settled in to wait. Jason had set up a proper command center with multiple screens, snacks, and even a betting pool on when something would happen. Though that felt a bit too cynical even for this situation. This is the strangest way to spend a weekend I can imagine, Jason said, opening a bottle. Admit it, it's better than sitting at home with that hysteric. We watched football, discussed various conspiracy theories about Marvel movies, and occasionally checked the screens. The first night passed calmly. The second too. I was starting to think my plan had failed. Maybe she was smarter than I thought, or maybe she had sensed something was off. But then Saturday evening arrived. The camera showed another car approaching the house. A BMW 5 Series. The same man from the hotel stepped out. He looked around nervously before approaching the door, as if checking whether any neighbors were watching. His arrogance from the hotel was replaced with obvious anxiety. "That's him," I whispered, even though no one could hear us. We watched on the screen as Vanessa opened the door. They hugged. My stomach twisted into a knot, but I forced myself to keep watching. I thought it couldn't get worse, but I was wrong. They moved to the living room, and through the hidden camera we watched them pour wine. She was laughing at something he said, touching his arm, leaning close. This went on for nearly an hour, drinking, flirting, touching. They drank wine in the living room. Laughed about something. Then they started kissing more passionately. I looked away for a moment, gathering my strength. "They're going to the bedroom," Jason said quietly. "Don't forget to subscribe to this channel and click like if you enjoy this story." I always read your comments and analyze which stories you like best so that I can create better stories. Thank you, I will continue the story. I waited another 15 minutes, each second feeling like an eternity. Then I took my phone, turned on video recording and left Jason's house. He followed me. We had agreed that he would stand by the bedroom door so this guy couldn't escape. As we crossed the dark street, Jason put his hand on my shoulder. You sure about this? He asked. Too late to back out now. I quietly opened my front door with a spare key. My heart was pounding so loudly that I thought they must be able to hear it. Through the bedroom door came sounds I never wanted to hear in my life. Sounds that would probably haunt me forever. I stood there for a moment, my hand on the doorknob, gathering every ounce of courage I had. I approached the door. Looked at Jason. He nodded, his face serious and supportive. I suddenly threw open the door and shouted, "Surprise!" What happened next resembled a scene from a bad comedy. Vanessa screamed. The man tried to grab his clothes, cover himself with a sheet, anything. His face turned white as chalk. He stumbled backward, nearly falling off the bed, his eyes darting between me and the door like a trapped animal looking for escape. What are you doing here? Vanessa screamed, pulling the blanket up to her chest. I live here, remember? I calmly replied, continuing to film on my phone. The red recording light felt like the only stable thing in the room. The man finally found his pants and tried to leave the room, but Jason blocked his path, standing in the doorway with his arms crossed like a bouncer. Not so fast, buddy. Listen, man, I didn't know she was married, he exclaimed, his voice cracking with panic. That's not true. Vanessa screamed. Patrick, don't listen to him. So his name was Patrick. An interior designer for private residences, as I later found out. Apparently, they had met when Vanessa was working on a client's home, and he was handling the interior design. How perfectly cliché. Oh, so you didn't even tell him? I laughed, though there was no humor in it. Vanessa, you're even worse than I thought. She tried to grab the phone from me, lunging across the bed, but I stepped back. Don't bother, I said. This isn't the only recording. There are 5 more cameras installed in the house, and everything's already saved in cloud storage. So don't wear yourself out. Vanessa froze. You could see on her face that she was trying to assess the scale of the catastrophe. Her eyes darted around the room, probably trying to spot the other cameras, her mind racing through everything she'd done in the house over the past few days. Rudolph, I can explain everything. There's nothing to explain. I saw everything. Recorded everything. And tomorrow my lawyer will receive all the evidence. I love him, she suddenly exclaimed, pointing at Patrick. You never understood me. You. Wait, what? Patrick interrupted her. Love. Vanessa, we agreed this was just. She turned sharply to him, her face a mixture of shock and betrayal. Just what? Well, you know, nothing serious. From the expression on her face, I realized that Vanessa had only just understood what she meant to her lover. I almost felt sorry for her. Almost. And what came next was even better. Get out of my house, both of you, I said, my voice surprisingly steady. This is my house too. Vanessa screamed, finding her voice again. It was. Until you decided to bring your boyfriend here. Pack some things and get out. You have 15 minutes. Patrick dressed faster than an Olympic sprinter and flew out of the house without even looking at Vanessa. He couldn't get his shirt on properly, one arm was in the wrong sleeve, but he didn't care. He just ran. Vanessa rushed after him, begging him to wait, but he had already gotten into his BMW and driven off. The tires squealed as he sped away, probably breaking several traffic laws in his panic to escape. When she returned, she was crying and screaming simultaneously. She tried to convince me that this was all a mistake, that she would fix everything, that Patrick was just foolishness and I was the real one. But it was too late. After what came next, her life was never the same. 15 minutes are up, I said when she continued to plead. Jason and I went to the bar on the corner. We ordered whiskey and exclaimed, "To freedom." The following weeks were a blur. Vanessa initially stayed with her friend Michelle, the same one who had been whispering to her for years about how all men are bad. I wondered what advice she was giving her now. Probably something about how this was all somehow still my fault, how I had driven her to cheat through my oppressive presence. The lawyer said that with such evidence, the case would be simple. The video recordings, the GPS data, the timestamps, everything was admissible in court. I got the house. It had been purchased mostly with my money before the marriage, plus I proved my contribution to our joint property. Vanessa got her personal belongings, some furniture she had created herself, and a portion of our joint savings. Not much, but more than she deserved in my opinion. The most interesting thing happened a month after the divorce. Michelle called me. It turned out Vanessa had been living with her all this time, turning her friend's life into hell with her hysterics and accusations. She tried to restore her relationship with Patrick, but he blocked her everywhere. Phone, social media, even email. Michelle was begging me to take Vanessa back, her voice desperate and exhausted. "She's your problem now," I replied and hung up. I felt a grim satisfaction in that moment. This was the finale of this story that surprised even me. But the best was yet to come. Vanessa tried to find new housing, but her income as a furniture designer was unstable. She had always relied on high-end clients with custom projects, and those jobs were few and far between. She turned to her parents, but they lived in Oregon and said they had no room. Her radical friends turned away from her one by one. It turned out that supporting someone on social media is much easier than in real life. Eventually, Vanessa found a small studio apartment on the outskirts of town. I learned about this by chance. I saw her post on Facebook where she tried to portray this as a new beginning and living on her own terms. There were few comments and most of them were generic, "You go girl." Messages from people who probably hadn't even read the post. And me? I was living better than ever. Jason and I really did go to the mountains, to the Rocky Mountains of Colorado. We spent a week hiking trails, watching wildlife, just enjoying the silence. It became our new hobby. There's something incredibly therapeutic about being in nature, away from civilization's noise and drama. Every step on those mountain trails felt like I was walking further away from my old life and closer to something better. At work, I got a promotion. It turned out that when you don't spend all your emotional energy on a toxic relationship, you have plenty of strength for your career. My boss noticed the change in me, commented on how much more focused and productive I'd become. I took on new responsibilities, started mentoring junior accountants, and genuinely enjoyed going to work each morning. A year after the divorce, I met Amanda on one of the hiking trips. She was an ecologist working in a national park and loved the mountains as much as I did. We started talking, went on hikes together, discussed everything under the sun. It was so different, so easy, so natural. There was no drama, no games, no walking on eggshells. She was genuine, straightforward, and emotionally stable, qualities I had learned to value deeply. I didn't propose to her after 2 months. In fact, I didn't rush into any serious steps at all. We just stayed together, got to know each other, built something real. And you know what? It was much better than any love at first sight. We talked about our pasts, our fears, our dreams. Amanda knew everything about Vanessa and never judged me for how long I had stayed. She just listened, understood, and helped me move forward. Last week, Jason, Amanda, and I were sitting by a campfire after a day's hike. Amanda was sleeping in the tent, and Jason and I were drinking beer under the starry sky. The fire crackled, sending sparks into the darkness, and somewhere in the distance, we could hear the sound of a stream. "Remember those 2 weeks when we played detectives?" he asked. How could I forget? I laughed. You know, I thought afterward, if you hadn't discovered her infidelity then, how much longer would you have lasted in that marriage? I thought about it watching the flames dance. Honestly, probably a long time. I was such a fool. Not a fool. Just hoping for the best. Maybe. But you know what's strangest? I'm actually grateful to her. She freed me from herself. Showed me who she really was. What happened after that was worth hearing. And now you're here, Jason raised his bottle, with a normal girl in the mountains you always dreamed about. And with the best friend who dropped everything to help me spy on my cheating wife. My reaction shocked even her friends. Hey, it was fun. We laughed. Somewhere far away an owl hooted. The fire crackled, throwing sparks into the dark sky. A few months later, an acquaintance of Vanessa's, Jennifer, texted me. She asked if I knew where Vanessa was. Apparently, she had disappeared from all social media and wasn't answering calls. Jennifer was worried. She mentioned that Vanessa had missed several important meetings with clients and wasn't responding to professional inquiries either. I replied that I didn't know and that it was no longer my concern. It was the truth. That part of my life ended that night when I opened the bedroom door and saw the true face of the person I had lived with for 6 years. Whatever happened to her after was not my responsibility, not my problem, not my life. Sometimes people ask if I regret how everything happened. Wouldn't it have been better to just leave quietly without all the investigation, filming, and drama? They say I should have taken the high road, been the bigger person, just walked away without making a scene. My answer is always the same: no. I don't regret anything. Because that experience taught me the most important thing: to value myself, not settle for less than I deserve, and not be afraid to start over. You can't guess how it will all end until you have the courage to act. It also gave me a new passion for hiking, a stronger friendship with Jason, and meeting Amanda. These were gifts I never expected, silver linings I couldn't have imagined when I first saw that message on Vanessa's phone. Vanessa wanted freedom? She got it. Freedom from a responsible husband, from stability, from someone who loved her. And I also got freedom from toxicity, from hysterics, from a woman who never valued what she had. It was the calmest day before the storm, and when the storm came, it changed everything. Now, when I stand on a mountain peak, look at the endless ridges stretching to the horizon, and feel Amanda's hand in mine, I understand. Sometimes the best things in life begin with the worst moments. You just need to have the courage to go through the pain and come out on the other side stronger, wiser, and ready for something better. Life has a funny way of working out. The marriage I thought would last forever ended in betrayal, but it led me to a life I never imagined I could have. The house that once felt like a prison now feels like home again. The job that was just a paycheck became a career I'm proud of. And the mountains that Vanessa never wanted to see with me became the place where I found myself again. Jason often jokes that we should write a guidebook, How to Catch a Cheating Spouse and Find Yourself in the Process. We never will, of course, but there's truth in the humor. Sometimes you have to lose everything you thought you wanted to discover what you actually need. Amanda and I are talking about buying a cabin near one of the national parks. Something small, cozy, a place where we can escape on weekends and during vacations. She wants to plant a garden, I want to build a workshop. We're making plans but not rushing. We've both learned that good things take time. As for Vanessa, I heard through the grapevine that she eventually moved back to Oregon to live with her parents. The studio apartment was too expensive, her business was failing, and she had burned too many bridges. I don't take pleasure in her struggles, but I don't feel guilty either. She made her choices and I made mine. The cameras and GPS tracker are long gone now, disposed of properly. I don't need them anymore. I'm not looking backward, I'm looking forward. And what I see ahead looks pretty damn good.